Welcome back to The Explainer. Grab your tech policy analyst hats, because today we're dissecting the geopolitical autopsy of a truly massive, blocked mega deal. I mean, we recently witnessed something in the tech world that's, well, it's unprecedented. It honestly might signal the absolute end of borderless tech as we know it. We're talking about the Chinese government stepping in and demanding the reversal of a fully completed acquisition of a highly sought-after AI firm.
So here is our roadmap for today. We are going to look at the $2 billion block, the anatomy of this crackdown, the Singapore loophole, talent and tech export controls, how investor reactions totally divide, and finally, self-reliance versus national security.
Okay, Section 1, the $2 billion block, a deal derailed. Let's dive in.
To kick off this autopsy, we have to look at the sheer size of the transaction that sent shockwaves through the global tech world. Meta offered a staggering $2 billion to buy the Chinese AI firm Manus. $2 billion. To put that into perspective, that is double what Mark Zuckerberg famously paid for Instagram back in 2012. This massive, massive figure really highlights just how aggressively Meta is trying to revamp its overall AI strategy. They're going all in on acquiring application layer tech and scooping up entirely new staff.
But, Manus wasn't just your run-of-the-mill startup. They build highly sophisticated agentic AI. Following the massive viral success of DeepSeek, Manus emerged as this globally recognized breakout star from China, actually delivering consumer-grade tools that were ready for prime-time use. Having that level of talent and proven capability made them an incredibly lucrative, almost irresistible target for Silicon Valley.
Now here is where it gets really interesting. The sheer logistical nightmare of it all. This acquisition was considered a done deal. Meta even claimed the Manus team was already deeply integrated into their systems. They were actively running, improving, and growing the service. So it begs the question, how on earth do you retroactively undo a deal when the engineers are already writing code and probably, grabbing lunch in the buyer's cafeteria?
Moving on to Section 2, Anatomy of a Crackdown, Beijing's Intervention.
This brings us to a frankly unprecedented regulatory intervention by the Chinese government, citing violations of critical tech regulations and national security. There's this brilliant point from Mercator Institute analyst Wendy Chang. She points out that the actual unwinding of the source code, that's almost secondary. The truly powerful thing here is the massive warning sent to China's entire domestic tech ecosystem. Beijing is broadcasting loud and clear that maneuvering a deal of this magnitude without their explicit say-so is just not going to fly.
So the crucial takeaway is how Beijing actually asserts its jurisdiction, even after the ink has completely dried. They use very specific regulatory levers. First, they look retroactively at the cross-border transfer of key IP. Then they heavily scrutinize whether these AI models were trained on data from Chinese nationals, which invokes their strict cross-border data transfer rules. And maybe most importantly, they leverage their ultimate legal authority over the actual Chinese citizens working as employees for the firm.
Which perfectly tees up Section 3, the Singapore loophole. Geography is not destiny.
You see, Singapore has really become the go-to neutral hub for globalizing tech firms. Thanks to its geopolitical de-risking and geographic proximity to China, heavyweights like ByteDance and Shein have successfully set up regional headquarters there to sort of navigate the US-China tensions. And Musk followed this exact same playbook. They relocated staff to the city-state last year to easily move talent around and seek global funding, well before the Meta acquisition even happened.
However, and this is a big however, Tech Buzz China founder Rui Ma notes a critical difference. Unlike ByteDance or Shein, Manus completely shut down its domestic operations in China and laid off all its local staff. Now, sure, maybe that was a rational business decision at the time, but it triggered intense domestic backlash. It was viewed as hurting the feelings of the government and the people. And honestly, that move painted a massive target on their back for severe regulatory scrutiny.
That leads us into Section 4, Talent and Tech Export Controls. Controlling the source.
We really need to completely redefine what the phrase export controls actually means in the modern AI era. Beijing clearly views preventing the brain drain of homegrown, critical AI talent as just as vital as securing shipments of physical semiconductors. Export controls are no longer just about hardware, right? They are firmly, absolutely about keeping top-tier AI talent and the code those people write locked securely within national borders.
But mechanics-wise, how do you actually untangle a completed deal? Well, regulators barred the Manus CEO and chief scientist from even leaving China. They launched retroactive investigations into that initial corporate move to Singapore we just talked about. And wildest of all, they demanded the extraction of injected software right out of Meta's ecosystem. While regulators do point to global precedents, like when the US forced the unwinding of the Grindr acquisition, executing these exact steps to rip out deeply integrated AI code, that remains a massive diplomatic and technical puzzle.
Let's look at the fallout in Section 5, Investor Reactions Divide, a tale of two valleys.
It is truly fascinating to see how wildly divergent the reactions had been. On one side of the Pacific, Silicon Valley investors absolutely panicked. They feared a massive chilling effect on any Chinese startup ever getting bought or funded by U.S. capital again. But on the other hand, for Chinese entrepreneurs who mostly service domestic markets, the reaction was surprisingly chill. Many viewed the government block as entirely justified. They realized that running afoul of Beijing's regulatory regime just isn't worth the risk when your primary revenue relies on staying in that market's good graces.
We have to remain objective here, though, and look at the American side of the equation. It's not like the U.S. tech community was universally cheering for this deal in the first place. There was significant pushback and a real fear over embedding foreign technology into a platform that boasts over 3 billion global users. Observers raised major security concerns regarding exactly how acquired foreign staff were being vetted. All of this has led to increased scrutiny even on early U.S. investments, like benchmark Series B funding into Manus.
And for our final section, Section 6, Self-Reliance versus National Security, the macro endgame.
Zooming out to the broader diplomatic tensions driving this whole autopsy, we are essentially watching two competing overarching goals collide. The U.S. priority is heavily anchored in national security. They want to scrutinize foreign code, protect data privacy, and maintain their lead in computing power and frontier models like Anthropic. Conversely, China's ultimate priority is tech self-reliance. Driven by mandates in their 15th five-year plan, Beijing is entirely focused on building the entire tech stack internally and aggressively preventing any talent drain. Simply put, both nations actively want to stop the cross-pollination of critical technology.
This dynamic is rapidly forging what we can safely call the splinter net of AI. Let's break it down. On one side, the U.S. is focusing on frontier models and artificial general intelligence, powered by cutting-edge Silicon Valley chips and vacuuming up global talent. On the other side, China, currently operating at a bit of a computing disadvantage, is leveraging its massive manufacturing base to focus on real economy applications, things like EVs and robotics. They are building out their ecosystem while waiting for domestic Huawei chips to scale up and fiercely retaining their critical homegrown engineers.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought. This Meta-Manus deal, it wasn't just some standard business transaction. It was a head-on collision of two entirely separate, increasingly walled-off AI ecosystems. If data, human talent, and source code can no longer cross borders without immediately sparking a national security crisis, what does the future of global innovation actually look like? Are we literally witnessing the final days of the borderless tech boom? Let that sink in. Thanks for exploring this geopolitical puzzle with me. Keep asking questions and keep diving into the data.